Hello, everybody out there. The first English chat for a while, since August, I think. And I have Thomas with me from Hermit's Mirror. Sorry, Thomas. I'm very happy you're here.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, it's really great. And people have been showing up and are already commenting. As you all know out there today, it's in English, so you have to listen well if you are German. Thomas, we already talked about one of your tarot spreads, the Tarot Tableau, which you all can rewatch. I put the interview in the show notes. But today we want to talk about another spread. But before we do this, we were thinking about, or I was proposing that we talk a bit about how you create tarot spreads. And yeah, perhaps I'd stop talking and let you talk.
Okay. Well, yeah, I love creating tarot spreads. They are probably my most popular posts on Instagram. Uh, I I really enjoy them. I don't think I need to make one every day though, so I try to spread them out. But I have done a lot of custom spreads based on what questions I've gotten in readings, where I think it would be useful to have something more streamlined in case someone asks a similar question again, and then based on a bunch of questions in the same sort of domain, I create a more general version of that. So my philosophy is that you should ask the questions that you want to answer and that you believe that tarot can answer. Or that you believe you can use tarot to answer, because not everyone can get the same answers out of tarot as each other. So I think that it's really important to find a spread that works for your use of tarot. So I tend to focus primarily for tarot spreads that can work for almost anyone. So it tends to have a psychological level and potentially a spiritual level that can be metaphorical. So if I'm looking at, for example, a career reading, someone may say, oh, I want to know about my career. My first question is, what do you want to know about your career, right? Like, you need to break it down into the component pieces of what it is that they're really looking for. And sometimes they don't know, in which case I'll turn to a general spread like the Tarot Tableau or something else. I like the Golden Dawn spread that comes in the little Thoth Tarot that they explain. I find that a good general spread as well. Um, but yeah, so I break it down into what I think are going to be the most important questions or sub questions, and then really try to get at all angles of that particular issue to make sure that we have an answer that actually will be useful at the end of the day. So, in the example of the career, you might want to, if someone wants to know about sort of where they go next in their career, you would want to look at, you know, what do they need to explore, either other industries or within their industry? What sorts of tasks are they really good at that they can shine in? um, and then how they want to position themselves to make that change, if it's a change or if it's a promotion, like what sorts of things they can do, actual action steps to make it happen, and then sort of like how they can supplement um, those actions if they like how they're going to turn out or not. So it's really important to break it down to each of the like sub questions within that. So you'll see in a lot of my spreads that they're made up of lots of little questions that are very specific.
Hmm.
So each card can answer each question, and then you can look at the whole thing to better understand, you know, the holistic picture.
So um, I understand you have you see the need of the client, and for him or her you develop then the question. And do you do this normally while you're in a session, in a reading, or do you do this beforehand?
Usually, so when I developed a lot of these spreads, I was doing written readings, not live readings. And
Hmm.
so I had time to sort of think through and go back and forth and say, okay, well, what is it that you want to know? Now, if there's a spread that doesn't fit that I already have, then I will customize as we go. But usually, most people's questions fall within something that I've seen before.
Hmm.
Um, and if not, sometimes I'll just do like an intuitive 3 card spread, and then find where we need to go from there. Um,
Yeah, that was another question. Do you have a one reading you always do if you don't know anything? So you do 3 cards basically.
um, if if it's a totally general open read and they want to know lots of things, but they don't know what they want to know, then I'll do the tarot tableau.
Yeah,
Um,
which is
because
quite big.
it is, yeah. But you don't have to read everything in it.
Okay.
So right, it tells you where to focus first. So you can use that as a starting point, and then from there, sort of figure out what the real question is that maybe they didn't even realize they needed to ask. Um, and but if if they say, "Oh, well, um, I want to know about a few things that are sort of unrelated. Let's just see what opens up," then I'll just do 3 cards and sort of read the story and say, okay, what does this have to do with what's going on with your life right now? Because that's what's coming out, especially if it's a shorter reading. Because as you said, the tarot tableau is large.
Yeah, it is quite a lot to think about. I mean, I wouldn't do this for a quick reading, I have to say. And do you use any read spreads like the Celtic Cross or something still?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep, every now and again I will turn to the Celtic Cross. I think that it can be very useful for certain kinds of readings and for certain kinds of readers. I think it can be very confusing for a lot of people too, and it doesn't fit every question.
Yeah, but
So, and I
generally you do your own spreads when you work with a client.
that yeah, I do my own spreads and the Golden Dawn 15 card um, spread that you may have seen in the
Yeah,
Thoth tarot
the
booklet.
opening of the key variant. Or?
I do that as well. The what I call the Golden Dawn spread, which I explain on my blog.
I haven't read this one
Yeah, I
entry.
don't think a lot of people have know about it, but it's in the. It's funny because I got it from. I think, the Thoth Tarot booklet. But it starts with 3 cards in the middle,
Hmm.
and then you sort of lay cards in a grid around it. So there are 3 more cards in each corner. Um, and the 3 cards sort of each represent one area. So there's the present, the current path, the alternative path, the psychological or internal factors, and then the external astrological karmic factors that may be at play.
I have to
That's a
look at
good one.
this up on your blog. For everybody out there, Thomas has an excellent blog with lots of information. So please go and read it. It's really quite interesting. And you're not quite intellectual with your spreads, I think. I just remember in the Lifeline Tarot, there's a kind of grammar spread.
Yep.
um, you're analyzing a sentence basically with your spread.
Yep.
But also, you're an artist, and I was wondering, how does art come into play when you create a spread?
Yeah, so the pattern layout can be useful. Not everyone needs it. Not everyone benefits from the pattern, but I do think that creating some sort of symbolic representation of what it is that you are trying to do. So even if that's, some people will make a heart out of their cards in a love reading, for example. That may be useful for them. I say go for it if they like it. For me, it tends to be more metaphorical. So things that are below tend to be under the surface of something that's above. If something is horizontal, it tends to be an obstacle. Um, every now and again, it can be a support. Like which card is on top of another may suggest um, sort of how it, maybe there's, like I said, an obstacle or something that comes out of it. So those are typically the things that I keep in mind as I'm creating spread patterns. But I think, some people don't need them. You can just ask the questions in whatever order you want and put the cards wherever you want, as long as you remember um, what you asked and where the card went.
Always write it down.
Yeah, exactly. Um,
Um, you also write a really good newsletter once in a while. I think not totally regularly, but I just received mine yesterday. And you are about to publish a new book, or you're going to publish, or you have published it
yep.
already?
Yeah, it's available through Amazon's print on demand, and it should be available in Germany as well. Um,
And
it's a
it's about the court
workbook.
cards, right?
Yes, yeah, it's called Awaken the Court Cards, and it's designed to help bring the court cards to life in your everyday. So, as a tarot reader, it can be court cards. I think are the most confusing for most people, at least in the U.S. as I've experienced it.
Same here.
Yeah, and so I think people forget why the court cards are special and how they represent people and personalities and aspects of either other people or ourselves. And so the workbook is really designed to help people get in touch with those different personalities or personas, as I call them, and then also to work with them. So to be able to develop that energy connection and then call on them when they need them. So that's the idea of awakening them, that you have access to all 16 of these energy types within you. It just, you may have natural affinity towards one or another. There may be some imbalance, like if you're all pentacles or discs all the time, that can skew you in certain directions. And so really helping you get to know them a little bit more. There are many exercises. There are correspondences that are a mix of traditional correspondences and what I've come up with. So if you're not sure how to really get to know a court card a little bit better, maybe every day for a week, you spend time drinking a tea from an herb that's associated with them, or wearing a color that may really resonate with them. And you get to play around with it a little bit and see what works. And there's a lot of room for journaling and reflection, of course, because that's how we really foster connection with these cards. There are also tarot spreads, one designed
Exactly.
for each of
And
the court cards. Yeah,
and
to help.
sorry, I'm interrupting.
Oh no, it's okay.
I'm always so excited when I talk to
Yeah,
people like you.
I love it.
And you're so calm and posed.
I'm
I'm so
trying to speak more slowly than normal because I know a lot of people are
No,
not native English speakers. So,
it's great. Everybody out there, even the Germans, are talking in English, which is very
okay.
nice of you. Thank you. So Thomas can read your comments.
Yes, thank
Um,
you.
um, Actually, Thomas has. We have one spread from this book for a starter before we look at the other spread for the winter solstice. And I just show it to you because I think when I first looked at you at it, I thought, wow, I can really see the card in this spread. So let's see how you feel about that. So if you want to, you can comment, obviously, but we keep talking. So this is the Queen of Wands, and I just told you that this is my favorite court card.
Yeah,
Who
and
would
I did not
know
know that, so I'm glad
exactly. You
it
felt
worked
it.
out.
And
Yeah,
I really like the way you built her into your reading, and you can really perceive her sitting there very strongly. And so from a visual point of view, I totally get it. But what are the positions you chose? Can you just read them out because I don't have my glasses?
yes. Yeah, so at the top for card number one, you have what I consider her inspiring aura. So you ask the question, where do I have greatest effect on others? So the way that each of these card positions and questions were developed was to think about the different strengths and challenges of the court card, as well as how you can use that particular persona um, in a specific, useful, productive way. So in this one, where do I have greatest effect on others? Bringing in that persuasion, that attraction of the queen, and it's at her top, right, where her crown or her aura would be. Then, sort of in the center with card number two, you have her regal bearing, so her queenliness. How can I demonstrate competence? And I think, for someone who is persuasive and attractive, it can be easy to sort of brush them off as just, you know, pretty and persuading people through that. But actually, no, she is quite competent. So it's important to remind yourself of that. In the middle, going sideways, we have the golden stalk. So that's a combination of the sunflower that she holds and the wand. And these are based on the Smith illustrations, which is what my own single line lifeline tarot is based on. Um, so I do incorporate the visuals there for these particular cards based on, or these particular spreads based on tarot cards. So the golden stalk, it's in the middle, sort of as a support. So what support does my will require? So you can have all the great intentions in the world, you can have all of this energy, this competence, this persuasion, but maybe you need a little bit of additional support, and that can come out in lots of ways. And then four on one side, so representing an aspect of her throne, is the pedestal. How can I establish proper boundaries without falling to pride? Right, so that idea of potentially being put on a pedestal, um, or being on a throne and seeming sort of overbearing in your queenliness can be a bad thing, but it also provides a little bit of boundary and defense to you. And then the last one, sort of symmetrically opposite, not really in the right position for the image, but is the familiar. So that's where you get to see a little bit of that cat that's in Pamela Coleman Smith's illustration. Where
Yeah.
can I always turn for support and wise counsel? So I did that because I like symmetry in a lot of my spreads, unless there's a reason for them to be asymmetrical. And I think that it's nice to have these two different sort of supporting aspects balanced on either side. So it doesn't quite match the card exactly, but there is the idea from some of the important aspects of the queen. And because she can't do it all herself, or she shouldn't want or try to do it all herself, right? Adding that extra sort of external assistance from the cat.
I really like the spread. I really need to do this. will do at one point. One of my videos. Just for everybody out there, this is one of Thomas's cards from his Lifeline Tarot. Anybody who watches the Mantica canal knows how much I like this deck. So just look at his site. It's going to be out, I hear, in color as well soon. And I'm looking forward to this very much. So
Yeah.
it's really very inspiring to have this deck, I really have to say. And yeah, the spread is also very inspiring. I think that's basically most of the questions I wanted to ask you. I was also thinking about whether you recommend a certain number of positions. But then I thought about your a year ahead spread.
Well, don't do that every day.
Okay.
You'll be
So would
stuck
you
in it.
say a good reading, how many positions should it have?
I for the court cards, I typically do 5 to 7. I think that that's a reasonable number. Um, it gives you a lot of depth, a lot of different angles, but it's not totally overwhelming. I think something like 3 um, is a good place to start, but it it seems very one directional,
Yeah.
and so I like to have 5 at least in a reading. I think once you go past 7, you're trading off um, specificity and sort of breadth, or you're spending a lot longer and you're looking at a lot more, which is why I have the 22 card tarot tableau, because you can look at anything in it because of all the different positions. But in a reading, I won't read every card because you don't need to. It just becomes too much information.
Well, it's
So,
like you do in a Lenormand spread, you don't always do all the cards as well.
right. Yep.
Yeah,
My year ahead is obviously very different.
exactly.
We can talk about how that works.
Yeah, let's shall we first talk, or do you want to show the spread as well while we're
Oh,
talking?
we can talk, yeah. Well, we can talk first, then show the spread, and then talk some
Yeah,
more.
I don't know what's better, but
Yeah.
well, first of all, um, I also read about this on your blog, and that you were kind of reflecting about the process of the creation. That's why I came up with this topic.
Mhm.
There was one thing I was wondering about. You mentioned in this blog that you were afraid in a bit that you used other people's
Mhm.
ideas for that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and
Yeah.
then I thought, is this really something we have to worry about when we create spreads?
Yeah, so I think, if the spread itself is what you're selling, then it should be original, right? That's the new thing, and if that's sort of what you're promoting, and um, that I think needs to then be original. But lots of people use my tarot tableau spread, right? They're not creating it for themselves. Many of us, if not all of us, have used the Celtic Cross. I I feel like a lot of people know the Golden Dawn because of my blog post on it. Not the Golden Dawn, but the Golden Dawn spread, because of my blog post on it, and would never have seen it otherwise. And that's not mine, but I get a lot of traffic on my website because of it. So I think you just have to be careful in what it is. So for me, I was selling this, sort of like massive experience spread, and it's written. It takes a long time, even just to like draw all of the things that get pulled with it. So it would not be a fun live experience, I don't think, for a lot of people. But the way that I was marketing it or promoting it felt very similar to someone else who had a spread with the exact same number of cards, which I had received the year before. And I didn't realize that I had taken some of their ideas. I knew that I had taken one of their ideas, but I thought it was sort of like open terrain, like it wasn't that special of an idea. Um, and so I felt very bad about it. It was not my intention. We were friends at the time, and it was, I didn't want to put like our friendship on the line for a tarot spread. And so I reworked it a little bit, and then I got to use some more of my own sort of like spiritual development and my own spiritual practice, and really think about, okay, I don't want to just recreate what everyone else is doing. I want to infuse it with my own version. So in a year ahead spread, you're obviously going to look at certain things. Like it's,
Obviously, yeah.
yeah, I mean, you're not going to recreate it and not look at the year as a whole.
Yeah.
Um, there were a number of coincidences that were
Mm.
sort of awkward. Um, and so I decided to reframe it, and reshape it. And I actually didn't end up promoting it after that. I just took it down as a promotion, and the people who wanted it found it. And then, you know, this year, I, or I guess after that experience, I then posted the spread as I had done it, in part to show my friend and anyone else who felt like, oh, this is too similar, that it's a completely different spread,
Yeah.
from what they were doing. It's just that on the surface, from the promotion of it, it sounded very similar.
Yeah. Marion is saying that she was once accused of stealing ideas for a spread, but she even didn't have access to the internet yet then. So I also think that many people can up with similar things at the same time.
Hmm.
Obviously, you were influenced then by the other spread, but on the other hand, I was telling you before we went online. Stuff in my head about tarot, I often don't know where it's coming from. It might be my inspiration. It might be something I read 30 years ago, or
Hmm.
just something I saw on Insta for a flash of a second before the next thing showed up.
Yeah,
And I think the only thing we can do, um, if we want to be creative, because we all are influencing each other, and that's the interesting thing about creation, in my opinion, is that we tell that we tell our sources, quote our sources, and refer to
hmm,
them, and yeah, basically that's it. What else can we do? I
right.
think.
And I
Um,
think, being honest about what's different, and you know, the tarot tableau is not my, like, I'm not the first person to come up with the idea of doing a grand tableau for tarot, but the way that I explained it and the steps that I sort of included and walked people through was the novelty. And so that that became the thing that I could say, this is mine. Creating a tableau with tarot cards is not mine. That's no one's. It existed before, a long time ago.
yeah,
And so you have to figure out, like, okay, what is it that I'm adding to this, or how am I using this to create something else? The illustrations in the Lifeline Tarot are based on Pamela Coleman Smith and the Rider Tarot. Like, those are not those are not unique, but the sort of translation of them into single black lines on white to open up random spaces and create random patterns, that is sort of the new thing that is added. um, it's not just a clone, like
yeah,
a direct clone.
no,
It's a derived clone, I guess. So figuring out, okay, am I adding something new? And in the case of a spread, if you're not selling the spread or advertising the importance of that spread to the reading, then you can use other people's spreads. I mean, people do it all the time. And if you got it from yourself, great. If you got it from someone else, give credit to that creator, but I don't think you need to do anything else. Like you said, it's just like in an academic work, you're citing sort of
yeah.
the method that you're using.
Or like in art. I mean, that's art to me.
Hmm.
But this is a huge topic, so I just wanted to tell people out there as well, um, to think about this when you create a deck, and also always quote where uh, where this is due, because it's quite upsetting how many people out there are stealing like total accounts from other people nowadays on Instagram or anything. It's really repulsive, especially if people claim to be spiritual persons. But that's another topic.
Yeah. Scammers are a whole nother level.
Yeah. I think we look at the spread while we're talking about it. It might be easier for the people watching.
Yeah.
Because it is quite a big spread.
It is.
Actually, you wrote in the blog, it's 77 cards. And you say in the blog that 77 for you is a logical, meaningful, important number for tarot. And I was wondering why you said this.
Yeah, so that was the number of the cards originally. So that was also the number in my friend's spread.
Okay.
And
Sorry.
the reason, no, that's
I
okay.
didn't count.
The reason, yeah, so this one has 76 now. And I'll explain the difference for those who are interested. But the reason why I had thought 77 was a great number was because it's the Fool plus every other card, right? So if you take out the Fool, because you are the Fool who is going to be experiencing this, you have every other card in the tarot represented in those numbers. Now, my spread does not use one tarot deck and it does not use only tarot cards, but someone could do this spread using the entire deck and leaving the Fool out if they wanted. And I thought that that was important for thinking about the journey that you're going to go on, each year as you are looking at your year ahead.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the number came from. As it happened, that was also just a convenient number for the the portals, the gateways, the landmarks that we'll talk about that are represented in each month.
Mm-hmm.
And so it wasn't hard to come up with the number 77 and sort of make easy sense out of it. So in order to get 77, originally you would have one year ahead card, 4 cards for one for each of the seasons, 12 cards, one for each month, and then 5 cards within each month. And that would add up to 77.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew I wanted the year, right? The theme of the year. That's pretty much every single year ahead will have that. I wanted each of the months represented. So that's going to be 12. For me, we'll talk about these 5 landmarks, but I have these 5, actually I have 7, but I have 5 that I talk about. Psychic landmarks or landmarks of the sort of your psychic landscape. And so each month can get a message from each of those. There's wisdom, like different form of wisdom in each of those. So I knew that I had 60 of those, 12 of the months, so that's 72, and then one sort of year overall would
Mm-hmm.
be 73. And then I thought, okay, well, I want something between the year and the month. If I do 4 seasons, that will get me to 77. 77 feels like an important number. Great. You could add 5 cards. In this case, I ended up dropping it down to 3 and instead looking at realms. So we can talk about sort of the concept of this year ahead and why I would choose realms, but that's how I got the numbers and how you now get 76. The nice thing about that for me was then 1 times 3 is 3, 3 times 4 is 12. So then you have the 1, the 3, the 12, and then 12 times 5 is 60. So then you have the 60. So there's a little bit of math harmony going on there.
For anybody who is confused now, I translated this spread in German, and you can read it on my blog, Tarot Wissen. So, and you also get referred, obviously, to Thomas, because it's his work, not mine. But Charlie says that's numerology heaven.
Yeah.
I like this. So before we get started about the positions, I mean, first of all, you do this. You do this for other people. This reading,
Mhm.
but only on a limited basis because you spent about 7 hours or so for doing one of these
Yeah,
spreads,
it's
which is
not a
really
good
impressive.
yeah, it's not a good return on investment, but I enjoy doing it. Next
Yeah,
year, yeah, I'm gonna do things a little differently where I'll have a live option
yeah, I
because
think
it
it's
a
much
lot of it
cleverer.
is yeah,
Actually.
the written form is what takes so long because you just have to photograph so many things.
Yeah, I can imagine.
There's
It's
so much
it's
formatting.
it's not clever. I mean, to it's great to have it all written in writing, but I stopped doing written interpretations because it's such a pain in the
It's so
you
time
know.
consuming.
So, um, eh, before we start to look at this more closely, you say it's best to do this reading for the year at the winter solstice?
Yeah, I do that. So the 12 months that I do are the 12 astrological months. So
Mhm,
the reason why I do that is I think it's useful if you use astrology. So then you can just sort of map it on to whatever astrological analysis you're doing for that month already.
mhm.
But then by having everything shifted approximately 10 days earlier, it helps you prepare for the month that's coming. So
Yeah,
if you are using your Capricorn, um, read it, the Capricorn sort of month ahead look, or the Capricorn section of the year ahead, then you can start essentially really planning for your January. Like it's coming into being at the end of December, but most of what you're going to be doing is for January. And I think most people plan in terms of the calendar, the month by month calendar, starting with the
mhm,
first of the month. And so it gives them a little bit of a prompt to say, okay, these are the energies that are already coming in. Here's what may be affecting me. So how can I plan for, essentially the first 3 weeks of the month? And then my mind's going to be shifting to next month anyway. So there's sort of a double bonus of that.
mhm.
And the reason why I do start at the winter solstice as opposed to the spring equinox, where a lot of people start their astrological year, or that's where sort of traditionally it starts, is because most people are looking for a year ahead spread around New Year's. So
Yeah,
I just shifted to that. I do think that there is something sort of special about this darkest part of the year. And
obviously.
as soon as the year starts, it's getting lighter. And so, uh, it does feel like an awakening, a beginning.
Yeah,
That makes sense. And
yeah.
so I just started there.
And you can get drunk on Sylvester, on on New Year's
Yeah,
Eve, and
exactly.
don't have a headache next day.
Yeah,
I mean, you can have the headache.
right.
Yeah, I can totally understand this. Um, I'm always thinking I'm doing something on the 21st usually, and on New Year's Day as
Mhm.
well. But yeah, that's something to think about. Perhaps if you want to do this or another year reading, it's already in a week. The
Yeah, it's soon.
the solstice. So that's why also we came up with this video today. But now, perhaps you start explaining. I think the inner circle is quite easily explained, right?
Mhm. Yep, it is. So the first card is the theme or lesson for the year.
Hmm.
I typically will draw that from an oracle deck and one that speaks to sort of things, things that can be themes for the year. So not every deck I have is going to be a good match for that, but something like I use the Threads of Fate very often for this. The Threads of Fate or like the Wild Unknown Animal Spirit, I'll use that deck. Sometimes I'll use the Wild Unknown Archetypes or another archetype deck, but I find that more useful elsewhere. So something big. You can also use a tarot card, of course, or any other divination implement, but I typically will use an oracle card just to get that big lesson.
Hmm.
And then um, I'll jump to the months just because that's also quite easy to understand.
These are the
So then,
12 cards.
yeah, so I'll typically draw a tarot card from either from one deck or four decks if I want to do it sort of season by season or just look at the whole thing.
And sorry, but
Um,
do you mix them all together? No, you take one for each season.
yeah, so if I were
Okay.
breaking it up by season, I would have one deck for winter, one deck for spring, one deck for summer,
I
one deck
like
for
this.
fall. Yeah, because then you can also sort of get that seasonal read without having to
Mhm.
pull a separate card for it because you can interpret it all in one.
Yeah.
But I actually often now will just do one deck for all 12. I think either option works. The difference is if you do one deck for all 12, you won't have any sort of repeating
Mm.
cards for those 12, whereas that is an option for me later in the spread. Um, if you do it season by season, you may get the same card in every single season, right? That's a possibility. So it depends on sort of like if you want to allow that or if you don't, and if you think certain decks speak to different seasons better
Yeah.
than others.
It's a
Um,
nice inspiration. I have to think about this. I like this.
yeah.
Yeah.
And for me, it's not necessarily like the theme of the month. It's more like the background energy. So
Mhm.
for me, it's like the weather. Like what is the weather of that month? Um, so if it tends to be a month that's going to have, like if it's a Nine of Pentacles month, and I'm doing a reading that's more interested in someone's business, like okay, this is a month where you'll be feeling like you have lots of money, and so it's okay to be expanding, improving, doing all of this stuff. If it is a Nine of Swords month,
Feeling and
you may
handling
need to
it.
be, yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean that you can't expand.
Mm.
It may just be that you're going to have, there's probably going to be a lot of fear around those things.
Mm.
And so if it feels like the wrong decision, recognize that it could also be because of that like background weather that's
Mhm.
affecting your decision making, not necessarily like a rational calculus about whether that's a good return on investment for you.
Yeah.
So it's like sort of the theme of the month, but it's not as personal. It's more like these are the things that are going to be happening around you. It makes it good for certain
So
actions, and it makes it less good for certain.
basically, like transits in astrology.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And then so those three cards in the middle are I call them realms, but they're also keys. So these are parts of you and sort of your psyche that you're going to be exploring during this year. And I think three is a good number to look at. Anymore is sort of like too much.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
it's it's almost like sub lessons in some cases, but they'll also be the tools that you use to help solve some of the issues that may come up. So whereas the first card is your lesson for the year, there are probably going to be a lot of challenges around that lesson in addition to great opportunities around it.
Mhm.
The realms that you explore will be more like um, sort of smaller one-offs. It's not going to be like every month there's this same sort of message of release that's coming to you.
Mhm.
Instead, it could be that you have the tool of, if I talk about like an archetype deck, that's where there's circles because the wild unknown archetype is circles. That's what I use. Um, it may be a different archetype that you get to explore and that will help you solve sort of the issues that you encounter throughout the year. And there are three, so it gives you some flexibility, some variety without, again, being sort of totally overwhelming.
Yeah. And sorry, did you say whether you used oracle cards or tarot for this?
For the three, I typically use Oracle, but I have used tarot cards as well. I just think that there's something fun about the Oracle for these sorts of bigger, abstract kinds of things. But tarot cards can work totally fine. You just want to get at a more abstract level of the
Yeah.
tarot card.
So you talk about realms and weather, um, and you also mention in your blog spiritual landscape. So you think
Yep,
of this like a map?
sort of. So I think of us as having psychic landscapes, right? There's you know, uh, when we are doing spiritual work, when we are just aware of sort of spirituality within us, if we are just curious about what our unconscious has to offer. I think we're navigating through a psychic landscape. And so this is something that I'm developing, hoping to write a book about in the coming year. We'll see what happens. I've said that in previous years. Um, but the idea is that you are sort of navigating this terrain, and your year ahead is a kind of map to that terrain.
Hmm.
And so, you have these different sections of your landscape that you're going to be exploring, these different realms. Um, you have uh, the weather, right? As you're passing through these different realms for each of the months. And then when we get to the 5 cards within each month, then it's the 5 monuments that I talk about sort of publicly or that I've talked about thus far. So when I was exploring my own psychic landscape, I discovered it was very dark and there was nothing really tangible to hold on to. So, for those who have done sort of astral travel, right, it's just this field of blackness with starlight for a lot of us. And those are different for me, energy or soul centers that we are connecting to. But I'm an earth sign. I have a strong earth placements, and so I wanted something to hold on to within that space, something to be able to return to, and a way to sort of consolidate that energy um, in a way that I could access when I needed. So as I was sort of doing the spiritual exploration, I realized, oh, I was doing a sort of archaeology. Like there are these monuments or these landmarks
Hmm.
within me that I can find and that I can come back to help me navigate my own sort of spiritual journey. Um, and so the ones that I've talked about online, and the ones that I use in the spread, there are 5 of them. And they have these very like poetic names. But they are the spiralic nest, which I envision as sort of this giant twisting tower that like an egg gets sort of sent up through, but it gets smaller and smaller. So the shell and everything else gets removed until there's just like this, soul core of light left. And then it gets to go to the next landmark essentially. And so the question uh, that I, or the theme of the card or the rune or whatever it is that I'm pulling um, for that particular landmark is about what needs to be stripped away in order to make new growth. So it takes the theme of that landmark, which I feel to be sort of one of 5 majorly important aspects of sort of my inner work, and then I share that lesson with everyone else who gets this reading um, through that. So you have the spiralic nest, you have the flaming gardens, and that tends to be something that seems really alluring. But in the vision of the flaming gardens, you're constantly knocked off the trail and you never actually reach sort of the thing that you're getting to. So that is, in this reading, it takes the form of a sort of warning about like, don't waste your time on this thing because you're not going to, it's not going to turn out the way that you're hoping that it's going to turn out. And it's going to be a tempting distraction. Um, then there's the grinding depths, which is sort of where the astral self or whatever goes next. A sort of waterfall after they fall off the path of the flaming gardens. And then they just get pummeled by the water onto some rocks below until it's sort of like an ego release that happens. The first 3 phases are very sort of like ego release. Um, and that tends to be things that are uncomfortable, but actually offer sort of like surprising or unexpected growth. So now we have this turn from you're stripping away, don't get distracted by these things. Now it's like, you may not really want to do this thing. There's some reluctance, there's some hesitation, but it can be really beneficial to you if you open up to the unexpected results.
Hmm.
Um, after you've sort of been like pummeled to dust in your psychic landscape, you then sort of filter out to what I call the star-scarred riverbank. And that was just this vision of, the water from the waterfall coming up to the riverbank, where all of these, I don't know, comets or asteroids or something were were flying by in the night sky. And that's, the fertile riverbank where you get to grow and you get to heal after this eco death. So there's this chance for renewal and for growth. And this tends to be the thing that is most beneficial for you to do if you want to like create new opportunities for yourself. So in a business, like this would be the area to look at if you wanted to an idea for where to expand your business or things to be thinking about, or for relationships or for personal growth. Like, what is it that I can do to help grow? Like, okay, I've seen all these lessons about what I need to do to like remove some of my ego, but what do I get to do now that's more um, growth oriented? And then the last stage or the last monument is the unsung graveyard. So that's, I imagine the sort of like very ghostly graveyard that is not scary, but is more mournful. And I think mourning is an important healing aspect. And with it, we get to remember past lives, ancestors, younger versions of ourselves, things we've forgotten. And so you get this time to get a new idea from an old version of yourself. And so you go to this graveyard essentially, and you get to celebrate what has come before. You get to mourn anything that's been lost. And instead of just being sad about it, you then get to reclaim it and figure out what to do with it. So that tends to be a message about something that you've forgotten or that you haven't paid enough attention to recently. Um, and so all of that is within each month. So there are 5 cards, runes, paintings. I do all sorts of bibliomancy within each month.
So sorry, you wrote runes. Okay, you take one a rune. I think this is the cross thingy.
Yes.
In your
Yep.
writing.
Yeah. So each of those gateways for me, I use a different method. So I'll have one tarot card, one oracle, one rune, one book from which I'll pull a verse, and then one painting that I pick from either an online gallery randomly or from a book of art history.
So you just open up the book and the picture that shows is...
Yeah, or that like my thumb lands on is the thing that I'll be looking at. It's sort of like bibliomancy, but with an art book.
But with a picture. I like this.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I do a different one. Like it's not a pattern. It's not like the Flaming Gardens is always a rune. Like one month it'll be a rune, the next month it'll be a book, the next month it'll be a tarot card. It's just wherever I feel like going at that point.
Yeah.
But it gives you a lot of variety. I do put all of the tarot cards and oracle cards back into the deck. The runes go back into the bag of runes. The books I don't reuse and the paintings I don't reuse, but those 3 where there's a more limited set of options, I will reuse. And if you're only using 24 runes, you would be using half of them for your whole 12 months. So I feel like you have to put them back. And that energy is relevant again. And it's surprising, like I often will get the same tarot card come up 3 times, like in 3 different months, but it will be in different positions. And often it tends to be like, okay, you need to strip this thing away. Like, okay, now you need to grow this thing. Now that you understand what it means to have it stripped away. And then you need to, remember this thing now that it's in the reversal position. So it's interesting to see what themes emerge. And of course, there are overlaps in oracle and tarot cards, in the text that you'll pull, in the runes that you use. Like a reading that I recently did, they had the maiden appear in the archetypes deck, and then they had the death rune appear, the rune that means is associated with death, Awaz. And then they had the painting Death and the Maiden appear, and it was just like mind blowing. These sort of like, okay, we have Death and the Maiden showing up multiple times across the months. Yeah.
I think I'm getting rid of this now so people see you better. I really like this. I have to rewrite my article actually because it's so much more complex. You said that these landmarks you are having kindly shared with us right now are something very personal, and you encourage people to find their own landmarks, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I actually wrote a little snippet for someone's magazine. So I'll probably be posting that to my blog about the process that I used to find my own so that you can sort of find your own if you need assistance doing so. But in short, for those watching, uh, you know, right as you're sort of doing your inner meditations, looking into the darkness that is the unknown within us, um, probably for most of us, we will see little pin pricks of light. Um, and essentially, you travel there. You see, like, okay, I am surrounded by all of these stars, all of these different soul experiences, the way that I understand it, my past selves, my ancestors, whoever, my inner child, maybe. I'm going to zoom in, see what's happening there. Um, and for me, I used Oracle and tarot cards to better understand, like, what does this space look like? What sorts of experiences are happening there? Maybe what creatures live there. I used an animal deck so that I could better understand the full picture. And then from there, I was able to have sort of like a I don't know that it was necessarily a visioning, but a visualization experience from that that really helped me understand, like, okay, this is what's happening here. And then after I had done that sort of initial view, and it just happened to be five that felt right to me. Then I came back later to say, like, okay, I want to go back to that place. I want to learn more about it. And then I didn't need the cards anymore. I just sort of sat and imagined what I had seen before, and then just sort of sat in the uncomfortable nothingness until more of it formed. And then I got to see this whole sort of scene playing out that helped me understand it. So, and as I said, I did more recently sort of realize that there were two more that I was accessing, but those are not part of the spread. And I think that they are much more personal to the individual. So I don't know that it's helpful to know what someone else's are. But it's not just five, it's not just seven. Like, we get to explore whatever we are, and essentially they're just energy centers and gateways to specific forms of messages.
Yeah.
Um, so I found them useful ways of connecting to something so sort of big as a year ahead.
Yeah, but that's a really big spread then if you take another 24 cards in
Oh gosh,
addition.
oh yeah, no, no, you do not need that.
Well, I really think I will try have a go at this for next year. Probably not as extensive as you do, but I like this mixing of different, not even oracle and tarot and runes, but also different tarots. That's a really good idea for the seasons. And I also have to think about these landmarks. Um, you said you are thinking about doing a book on this as well, right?
Mhm. Yes,
But
yep,
it's
and so
still
that,
it's not really.
yeah, it's not. It would it would be part guide to finding your own, and then part guide to how I use mine, um, and part sort of visualization and experience of going through mine in case you don't want to find your own, or you
Mhm.
want to just recreate mine, um, in some sort of metaphor. Uh, so we'll see how that actually shapes out, what it looks like, and when I'm able to dedicate time to do it, because it is very intensive. And as we talked about, I still work a normal corporate job from 9 to 5 or so. And so finding the time to do these sorts of in-depth things can be very challenging. I will say, for those who don't want to spend like 8 hours doing one of these, um, a lot of it is simply the like recitations or the preparation that I do. I spend half an hour almost doing like Orphic hymns and boundary drawings and all of the stuff because I'm connecting to someone else. I don't need to do all of that for me. I'll still do the Orphic hymns because I think that they're valuable for getting into the right headspace. Um, but each month is essentially its own reading, like those five cards with the weather card, with the context of the year and the different realms. Like, I put all of them together in one image and I look at all of them, but I do them separately, and I'll reference, like often there will be something in the fifth position of remembrance that has come up in a previous month, and so it's saying like remember what you did in that month
Mm.
as here. So there can be some interplay, but if you're doing this for yourself, or even if you're not, like it's totally fine to just analyze each individual month separately.
I really like it a lot. I'm already, and that's where the stuff starts. What is yours and what is mine? I'm already thinking about how would I be doing certain
Oh
things
yeah, you
better
can use the
differently.
spread.
Yeah.
You're welcome to use it.
No, it's really fantastic. Thanks for sharing this. Charlie again is very eager to try it as well.
Oh, I'm glad. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
December was a good time for me because I take more vacation in December.
Yep. Well, I unfortunately don't have vacation in December because I have a
Mm.
boy. It's the busiest time for him to get on my
Yep.
nerves. So, yeah, but I think that's it for today. I mean, we talked about an hour. I'm really impressed by this spread. I'm so impressed by all the stuff you're doing. And everybody out there, Thomas is very active on Instagram as well. So you have a lot of lives going on there, I saw, which I never seem to be able to watch. But I see that you're doing a live thanks to my iPhone. And I think it's worthwhile to get his newsletter, to buy his stuff, and
Thank you.
to follow him on the social media, because you're a really very creative guy. I love these people. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And there are no questions, but just assurances that you're doing great with what you're doing. Keep on the good work.
Well,
And
thank you.
yeah, I think we're closing down for today, because you are starting into your day. What's your time right now?
It is 10 a.m. So 10 in the morning.
Well, then you have a lot to do probably for the day. You're living in Texas?
I'm now in Arizona.
In Arizona. Okay. So my greetings to Arizona. Here in Hamburg, it's about going into the evening now. It's 6 o'clock. And there's still loads of to do as well. But thanks for taking the time. And it was really very interesting, as Nadia writes right now. For everybody watching, I'm back next week in German. We are going to go through the Rauhnächte. Do you have a concept of the Rauhnächte in America? The 12 nights between Christmas and the 6th of January. Do you do this?
Well, we have most people do not, but we have the 12 Days of Christmas song. So people know that, but they don't usually celebrate. Yeah.
So,
there's a Christian holiday that happens at the end of it. I don't remember what it's called.
Yeah. Well, it's a big thing in Europe to do the 12 nights reading as well. People do their oracling during this time.
Okay.
I'm going to do a session of people coming up every day to draw a card. So perhaps next year, I was planning to do this with international guests, but it was too complicated this time. Perhaps next year you're going to be one of them.
Excellent. I would love it.
It will be fun.
It's always good talking with you.
Yeah, it's really nice. So yeah, I think we said it all. Thanks for sharing. I will put everything in the show notes. And yeah, I say bye to everybody today, and have a good day.
You as well.
Thomas. Other people are going to sleep soon.
Have a good evening.
Speak to you later. Bye.
Bye.
Gonna be hard.